Hello guys, and today we're going to be looking at a scenario where Canada forms an empire. If you guys want to see more of these videos, then make sure to like and subscribe if you want to see more. And let's just get on with the video. Before we start this video, I just want to make a disclaimer that Canada is definitely not this strong, and also this is not going to be particularly very realistic, because I'm going to make them do some things that they really couldn't do in real life. So we need to talk about some things before we start this scenario, because Canada cannot attack any other countries when they're like this. They want to get on par with other nations surrounding them, and that's what they're going to do. So we can see Canada expanding their military, starting to focus on economy and making their economy grow. And soon their economy is pretty good, and they start to bump up their military spending, and they start to get a good military. But they want Greenland. Now, I don't think any Canadians want Greenland, but the Canadian government wants Greenland because they have a lot of oil there, and they need oil to function, even though they're not the United States, and even though they have oil. And they're going to send an ultimatum to Denmark to get Greenland, and Denmark says no. And Canada is like, well then you want war. And so they declare war, and we can see Canada declaring war on Denmark. Now, Canada, now that they've expanded their military and just expanded their overall economy, they are stronger than Denmark. And Denmark kind of reacts slowly to this, but a few days after the declaration of war is signed, Canada sends troops into the southern areas of Greenland, and Canada, they take these areas of Greenland. And Denmark, they're still sending forces, but by then the Canadians already had taken all of this coast, the valuable coast, and now basically all of their population is gone, and Greenland just surrenders over to Canada. And Denmark soon says, okay, I'm not fighting this war anymore, and they just literally say, and now let's look at a peace treaty. I just want to say something really quick. Like military alliances and just alliances in general, like NATO and the CSTO, they don't exist in the series or this video, because it would just make it really hard to do any of this, because Canada is in NATO and they just invaded a NATO member. So yeah, but Canada's rampage isn't over yet, because a few years after their invasion of Greenland, they declare war on Iceland, and the world is now actually starting to say, hey Canada, can you not do that? It's actually really bad. Stop massacring people. Stop invading countries just because you want to. And they're like, no. And Canada starts to send forces into Iceland, and they land on this tip, and soon the rest of Iceland just starts to fall. I think they capture Reykjavik, I don't know, and then Iceland just surrenders. And in this peace treaty, we can see them taking all of Iceland, and now Canada is forming them like a little Arctic empire. And a United States election is coming up, and Canada, they see an opportunity to invade the United States with this. The two parties are really into it this election, and if one president wins and one loses, then those parties that lost will be very mad. And Canada and this propaganda is enough for some states to start to break away because of this leader, because they do not like his values, they do not like what he is, and I'm going to draw up the Civil War. And this is what the Civil War is going to end up looking like. It's basically all of the unpopulated areas minus Washington and minus Texas. So we can instantly see the United States invading into this peninsula. And we can also see them invading into more of Virginia, and they take all of these northern Virginia areas, and that's bad for the Virginia, because that's where all their population is. We can also see the United States taking these areas of Washington, and this whole area surrenders. But in bad news for America, the rebellion is pushing back the government in Virginia, and they almost get up to Alexandria. But the bad news doesn't stop there for America, and we can see the Green Team pushing into America's territory, and this area is kind of blocked off because they've done a blockade, and they start pouring in. They take Nag's Head and whatever that place is called, and they start to threaten Greenville, and they go down and they capture Raleigh, and soon they start making spearheads out from there. But then the government starts to send people up from Florida, and they are able to push back the rebellion in North Carolina, and they even push them back to Greensboro and take these areas. We can also see America cutting off Savannah and cutting off the water access from Georgia. But Canada can see that the Confederacy is going to lose this war, and they need to act fast before the Confederacy falls. And soon we can see Canadian troops pouring in from Maine, and Canada is going full force because they want to take as much land as they can. And Detroit is captured, and some parts of Michigan start to fall, and Michigan fully surrenders. And the Confederacy is able to push back the Americans in Virginia because they are retreating up north, trying to stop Canada. And Canada can see that because they get massively pushed back in Michigan and recapture Detroit. And in Maine, they are able to push back a little bit, but a stalemate is held. And they capture Buffalo, New York. And the Canadians are doing really good in this war because the Americans still have the whole Confederacy against them, and so they cannot just fully bash out Canada. And a Canadian general is able to march through, and they make a large encirclement and encircle these troops, and this island is recaptured, and Michigan is under Canadian control once again. And that encirclement was a big loss to the Americans because they had a large quantity of troops in there, and we can see the Canadians starting a spearhead, and they're just trying to go through New England and meet up with New York so they can get all that economy. And more Canadian troops start to pour in through Vermont and New Hampshire, and they connect up this front, and now America is starting to show signs of collapse. But we can see Americans landing in Vancouver and taking the whole Vancouver area. And in Alaska, the Canadians are doing very well, and they push into these areas, and Alaska is getting invaded by the Canadians extremely fast because the Canadians have the advantage in this area. And Canadians, they capture this island, but they also start to bomb the fronts, and I think this is that's against the Geneva Convention, and Europe gives them weird looks. They were already giving the Canadians weird looks because a few years ago you were just their best bud, and now you're invading them. And the Canadians connect up their front in Maine, and they start to steamroll down New England. And America is starting to get really tired of this war, and even Savannah is recaptured. And they even start a new push in South Carolina, and it goes very well. And some Floridians start to rise up and help the Confederacy win this war because they did not like how the election turned out. Yeah, why English? And the Confederacy also starts a push near Louisiana. And this area starts to be crippled, and soon it falls over to the Confederates, and this is extremely bad for the Americans because this area had New Orleans, and Florida starts to fall. But soon American reinforcements are here, and they are able to push back the Confederacy to northern Florida. And and they also push back the Confederates in South Carolina, and they even start to push up more into Virginia. And the Canadians are getting pushed back in New England, and they're getting pushed back to their border. And the Canadians finally retake Vancouver, and soon American forces are actually starting to get very tired, and some Americans start to go against their own country, and they start to join up with the Canadians in Ohio and in Illinois. No, it's like Indiana. And soon the Canadians have a lot of support because some people like Canada more than America in this area, but they just didn't join up with the Confederacy because they didn't think they would win. And a new spearhead is made, and it instantly grows fast. And the American troops are starting to get tired. They don't have like all the population that's in Texas. They didn't have like a bunch of the population that's in like Arizona and stuff. And they're starting to lose population that are in these southern states. Florida starts to fall more, and soon Miami is captured, and all this population goes over to the Confederacy. And this is a huge blow to the Americans because Florida was a very, very valuable place in population and in economy, and so they've just lost that, and now they are very mad. But the train of losses don't stop there because the Americans get pushed out of the border of Canada and like Vermont, or no, that's New York. And the spearhead speeds up more, and the spearhead starts to go down, but American troops start to flood, but the spearhead is just going way too fast, and it cuts off the rest of New England from New York and Pennsylvania and New Jersey. The Canadians start to roll through Ohio, taking these areas and setting up a new front that is very close to the Virginian front. And the Canadians don't stop there, and they take Newark, and they march into Manhattan and take Long Island. And they also go through, they take like Connecticut, and they take Providence and Rhode Island, and Boston is taken, and this part of New England surrenders. And now the Americans are getting absolutely destroyed in New England. In America, they can see a flood of Canadian troops starting to rush down, and they start to see Green Team troops heading towards Richmond, and they liberate it, and they start to roll through and make it near Washington, D.C. and capture Alexandria. And the Canadians push down, and they capture Washington, D.C. And the United States falls. And now let's look at a peace treaty. And this is what the peace treaty is going to end up looking like. Let's dive into it. We can see the Canadians taking all of upstate New York, well, parts of upstate New York and all of northern New England, and they take Michigan, and they take some islands surrounding it. They also take all of Alaska, and let's just dive into America. So they've changed a lot. They don't have New York, they don't have Michigan, and now they're like kind of crippled. Their economy is kind of bad now because they just wasted it all, and it's under a new government, under a new person, and yeah. But that is going to do it for today's episode. I hope you guys enjoyed it, and make sure to like and subscribe if you want to see more of these videos. And this is my first like real video on this channel. Yeah, thank you for watching, and goodbye.